Hi, it's Cara and welcome to another video. So today we're talking about the Booktube SFF Awards. I'm filming this start of June, but apparently, I don't know whether it got extended or I misread the timeline, but the voting is happening at the start of July, so I may end up showing you this later. If it's closer to the end of June, that's why. I'm going to talk about all the books I did read for every category. I did read all of the things that were shortlisted. Very proud of myself. I didn't expect to get everything read, especially not like in the 3 months or so that I was reading for it. But I am going to go through each of the categories, what the books were, and what I thought of them. Some of these I'd already read last year, but a lot of them I did read this year, so let's chat about it. The first category is Best Fantasy. So the nominated shortlisted books were Founderside by Robert Jackson Bennett, Cersei by Madeline Miller, and Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence. So let's start with Founderside. This is I was gonna say, this is an adult fantasy. That's literally the genre. In this book, we follow, what's our main character's name? Sansa, or Sansa. And she's lives in this world where the magic system basically works that you can write on things and change the thing's perception of itself. So it changes its characteristics and behavior. So for example, you can make wood more wood-like, like harder, or make it steel-like. You can, change its own perception of itself, essentially. And that's how their whole magic system and engineering and everything kind of functions off this magic system. Honestly, the magic system is like so strong in this, and also it's the people living in the world don't quite know how it works, so you're learning new things about it all the time as they are learning new things about it, which is really interesting. Sansa is a thief, and she has a weird ability that she doesn't know how she got, where she can touch things and kind of feel them out. So for example, she can feel a wall and see where its weak points are or where footholds would be. So she's a really, really good thief. But it also means everything she touches speaks to her in this way, so it's really overwhelming. Like, she has a hard time relaxing because everything's talking to her all the time. And the plot's really expansive, and I don't even know how to just explain it other than like you should read it, because the magic system, the characters are really funny. There's like some trope elements, like the thief, the like brooding academic, but they kind of all push through their tropes into something more complex and beautiful. I loved this. I can't wait for book 2. It's so freaking good. I'm very confident I gave this 5 stars. Then we have Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence, which is the second book in the Book of the Ancestor series, which follows Nona Grey, who is she goes to a convent that is like for assassins, like assassin nuns. It's so good. This is book 2, so I won't really talk about the details. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as book 1. It's a little bit shorter than book 1, but I did enjoy it, and I can't remember what I rated it, but it was pretty high. And then Cersei by Madeline Miller is an historical fantasy retelling, which essentially outlines the the Odyssey, but from the perspective of Cersei, who is a witch goddess that Odysseus comes across on his journey. And it's really a feminist look at her and her entire life and how it leads to this moment and how she was misunderstood by the men, etc, etc. I really enjoyed this. Again, I rated it really highly. I did read this last year, I believe. And I loved it. It was really good. Overall though, for this category, which is what we're here to talk about, I think Founderside is the clear winner. I think it just is so well developed. It's very complex but also fascinating. This is like a 500-page book, I think. Yeah, 500 pages, and I flew through them. Like, this just disappeared beneath my eyes. It was so goddamn good. I can't wait to read the next one. This was a clear winner in this category, but all three of these I really enjoyed, and I would recommend all three. The next category is Best Science Fiction. We have Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is a alternate history space race story where Earth got hit by a meteorite, and so everyone knows that, or the scientists know that the greenhouse effect is going to make the planet inhabitable in the near future. So what would have been NASA is now an international project to get people into space and away from Earth. So I loved this. That's book one. I have lent it to a friend though, so I don't have it. The next one is Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers, which is the third book in the Wayfarers trilogy. It's a really quiet, slice of life kind of story looking at the humans that left Earth hundreds of years ago. And the other one in this category is Vengeful by V.E. Schwab, which is the sequel to Vicious. This is a superhero kind of story. Super villains, more like. We follow Eli and Victor Vale, and they're kind of like battle against each other, but they're both super villains. It is really good. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it was quite as strong as Vicious. I read this at the end of late last year when it first came out. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think it was quite as strong as Vicious, which is like a masterpiece. So between these two and the Calculating Stars, my favorite was the Calculating Stars, which is somewhat evidenced by the fact that I've already lent it to a friend. It is so good. Just there's great characters, great plot. Its historical aspects are so well researched and well thought out. It's just so good. I can't wait to read the sequel. I've got it on the shelf back there. The next category is Best Young Adult. We have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, which is a fairy story, which is like taken Booktube by storm. We follow Jude and Carden, and Jude's parents were killed and she was taken into fairy, where she's grown up basically her whole life. And Carden is one of the princes of fairy. It's like a dark, twisted, enemies to enemies romance. I don't understand. Then we have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I just read this last month. And this is a sci-fi following Spencer, whose dad was branded a coward, and he was a pilot. And she desperately wants to become a pilot as well. And it's a lot about her overcoming that adversity of everyone's having this reputation of her family. And we also have Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor, which is the sequel to Strange the Dreamer. This is a fantasy sci-fi blend. It's hard to explain. We follow Laszlo, who is a librarian who goes to seek this mysterious city that he knows he used to know the name of, but the name went missing, and now everyone only knows it as Weep. And then we also follow Sarai, who is the child, she's Godspawn, so her skin's blue, and she's in hiding with her siblings because the Godspawn should have all been killed. So there are kind of two perspectives. And this is the sequel to that. The plot's really complicated, but it's all really spoilery, so lyrical writing in this, amazing. Loved it. I do think this second installment though was a little bit lacking in plot and a little bit rushed. So my winner for this round was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I think technically I may have actually rated this one higher, maybe even The Cruel Prince higher when I first read it, but on like reconsultation, I think this one's strongest. Plot-wise, character-wise, world-building-wise, like all around, I think this is the strongest pick from the bunch. The next category is Best Middle Grade, and we have two that I have with me and one that I borrowed from the library. That one's Arushar and the End of Time by Roshni Chokshi, which is a Indian-inspired. It's kind of like a retelling of the, what is the thing called? The Mahabharata? Mahabharata? I think. Which is like a Indian folklore, and we follow Aru, who accidentally releases an evil spirit from a lamp, and everything kind of goes effed up and she's on a mission to get everything back in true like it's a Rick Riordan Presents novel, and kind of in that style it's a big like middle grade adventure as her and a friend try and solve the problems. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. It was really funny. Then we have City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. This is Victoria Schwab's other entry on this list. This is her first middle grade foray into middle grade, and this one follows Cass, who can see ghosts, and her parents believe ghosts exist but can't see ghosts, but they have a famous ghost hunting show, and she gets dragged to Edinburgh in this installment. Sorry, that was a burp. This installment, she gets dragged to Edinburgh by her parents, which is filled with ghosts, and some things go down. This is quite short, especially compared to the other two in this category. And I think this probably read the most young. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. I think I'll continue to read this series, but it suffers from I'm not the right audience kind of syndrome. Like, obviously, I'm not the target audience for this, and so I think it just read a little bit young to me. It was less accessible to me, but young people would love this. Then the next one is the final one in the category, and what I think is probably the winner is Wonder Smith by the Calling of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the second book in the Morrigan Crow series, and the first one's Nevermore. The third one's just had its name announced, and it's Willowpox, I think. And this series follows Morrigan, who believes she's cursed, and that she'll die on her 11th birthday, but then, what's his name? Blah, 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 blah. Her friend, I can't remember his name, who kind of becomes her father figure, takes her away on her 11th birthday to a new land known as Nevermore, which kind of protects her from dying, and she learns more about herself and the world, and this is the sequel to that. I really enjoy this series. This, I know everyone says it, but it's true. It has the whimsy and the magical mystery of Harry Potter. Like, it has that nostalgia feeling that Harry Potter has, without being anything like Harry Potter at all, other than maybe like the learning about a new world kind of scenario. It was just so good. It was such a fun time, and I loved it. They are pretty chunky for middle grade. They're like almost 500 pages, this one is, but it's such a good time. Like, such a good time. This one is my winner for the middle grade category. The next category is best debut, and this is probably my most controversial section, where I have the most controversial opinions. So the first option is Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. I have unhauled this because I didn't like it at all. I didn't absolutely hate it. Like, there's nothing absolutely offensive, but I didn't enjoy the romance. I thought it was super unrealistic and insta-lovey, and the plot was not that strong, and the characters weren't that strong, and the magic system wasn't super well explained. Ugh, I just didn't love it. Some people love this book. It's a West African inspired fantasy with some Avatar themes, like elemental magic, and I like elemental magic. This, I think, was a bit, I just didn't get it a lot of the time. I read it when it first came out and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And as soon as people started, it's like, so it was kind of a mixed camp. People either loved it or, particularly about the romance, didn't like. The romance for me then, yeah, became 100% the thing I really didn't like. We follow Zaylee, who's part of this magic group that have been oppressed, I think, from memory, and then we follow a princess and a prince, and they're the kind of the ones doing some of the oppressing, and there were some things that I liked, but really overall I was not a fan. I have no intention of picking up book 2. I've unhauled it. In fact, I think it's sitting over there on an unhauled stack, but I can't be bothered getting it because I really didn't like it that much. And I have no intention of continuing to read. Then we have Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, I think. I think that's the name. Here it is. I borrowed this out from the library. This is the first in a urban fantasy kind of futuristic apocalyptic story. We follow Meg, I think her name's Meg, yes, sorry, I don't have it to check, who is Navajo, and so Native American, and there was a big flood that knocked out a lot of everything, and a lot of places are underwater, and some of the few places that still exist, the ancient Native American myths have kind of come back to walk the earth again, and she's a monster slayer. I really enjoyed this. It was good. It's quite short, and I think a little bit like tropey but not tropey at the same time. I don't read a lot of paranormal and it kind of urban fantasy, and it definitely read kind of like a classic urban fantasy, just in this interesting setting. So I really enjoyed the setting. I liked the characters. I just think the writing was a bit not my style, though I think some people will absolutely love it. And then the winner for me for this category is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a Chinese-inspired fantasy following a war. I think it's like the Opium Wars, but like fantasied, if that makes sense. It's like a fantasy version of the Opium Wars, the Rape of Nanking, a lot of like really horrific historical events in a fantasy version. I really enjoyed this. It was advertised as super dark, and honestly I don't think, like, it is dark, but it didn't impact me full dark as I was expecting it to. But I had a great time reading this. I'm so excited for the sequel. The characters are really intriguing and the world's amazing, and I can't wait to read book 2. Then we have Best Graphic Work. The 3 options were Monstrous Volume 3 Haven, which is a steampunk fantasy thing. It's so complicated. I don't even understand the plot half the time. Then we have The Adventure Zone, Here They Be Gerblins, which is a McGuire brothers adventure. It's their podcast where they play D&D but novelized. I really enjoyed it. And we also have Aquicorn Cove by Katie O'Neill, which is a sweet little environmental story following aquicorns. It's cute. I borrowed all these out from the library, and I ended up picking as my favorite The Adventure Zone, Here There Be Gerblins. I think it just had the strongest plot that I understood. The artwork's best in Monstrous, but I am so confused by the plot and world building in that story. I just don't understand what's going on. Aquicorn Cove I think was just a bit short, so it was hard to get a full depth of story from. I wish it was longer. So Adventure Zone is my winner. And the final category is Best Short Work. So this is novellas. The first one is Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan Mcguire. This is the 3rd book in the Wayward Children series, which is a series of novellas following kids that go into portal worlds and then come back and are trying to like sort out their lives. The first one's Every Heart a Doorway. This is the 3rd one. I really enjoyed this. It kind of follows directly on from Every Heart a Doorway, but book 2 is set differently. Then the next one was Binti, the Night Masquerade. I read Binti a while ago. I like this series. It's an African inspired, though I don't know, East African maybe, inspired series following Binti, who is the first human to be invited, or the first African? No, I think first human to be invited to this famous intergalactic academy. It's very sci-fi, and her whole ship gets decimated on the way there by an evil alien race, but then she's learning to communicate with them. This is The Night Masquerade, I'm pretty sure is the 3rd one. I enjoyed this trilogy, but I didn't love it. I think the world was really interesting, but the pacing was a little off. I think these could have been full novels. And the final one, which was my pick for this category, is Artificial Condition by Martha Wells, which is the 2nd Murderbot novella. Murderbot is a series of sci-fi novellas that follow Murderbot. He's a security unit, they call them sec units, but he's gone rogue. He hacked his own system, and sec units are like a blend between robotics, like they're kind of more like cyborgs. They've got some human components, but they're not really human. And he reads kind of like an autism spectrum person. He doesn't really understand the world, and he thinks he's very different from everyone else, but really if you're looking at his like thought process, he's actually quite similar. He's hilarious to read from as a narrator. It was a great story, and I've read all 4 in this series now, like the whole quartet, and love them. So Artificial Condition won for this category. So those are all the categories and my picks for the Booktube SFF Awards. Comment down below what your picks for each category would be if you participated and were doing the read-alongs for this. And otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon with another video.